She writhed on the ground, her hands clutching her leg, tears streaming down her face. The other girls circled around her, whispering frantic prayers, their own fears rising, and then, from deep within the forest, came the unmistakable sound of footsteps. The bandits! They had heard the scream. The night air was thick with tension, and the silence of the forest was shattered only by the pained cries of Ummi. The bandits heard her screams, halting their horses. They exchanged glances and quietly dismounted, careful not to alert their prey. Adamu motioned with his hand, signaling for silence as they crept towards the sound like predators stalking in the dark. Deep in the forest, Jumai knelt beside Ummi, her hands trembling but determined. Ummi was writhing in pain, her legs swollen from the snake bite. Jumai tore the edge of her hijab, making it into a tight strip, and quickly wrapped it around Ummi's leg just above the bite to slow the poison from spreading further. "We have to move now," Jumai whispered urgently, her voice low but firm, her eyes scanning the darkness. "They will find us any moment from now." With a grunt, she helped Ummi to her feet, dropping one of Ummi's hands over her shoulder. The girls moved slowly, trying to keep quiet as the weight of dread settled in their hearts. They hadn't gone far when a harsh voice echoed through the night.
"Nagansu!
In an instant, the sound of gunfire tore through the silence. The night erupted in chaos, bullets zipping past them. Panic surged in Jumai's chest, and she held on to Ummi tightly as the girls scattered in different directions, the terror in their hearts pushing them to flee blindly. "Run!" Jumai screamed, her voice barely heard over the gunfire. Her heart pounded louder than the bullets whizzing past her. But she knew one thing: they had to keep moving. Just as Jumai and a few of the girls who had fled in the same direction reached a narrow rocky path, the ground beneath them gave way. Jumai barely had time to scream as the earth collapsed beneath her feet. She and the other girls plummeted down into a hidden pit, the ground swallowing them all. Before we dive into this interesting tale, this is a plea to you, my amazing viewers who are yet to subscribe, to please be a part of my growth by subscribing to this channel. You can check out the description box or the icon above to see the first part of this video. To you, my returning subscribers, thank you so much. Now, join me as we dive into this super interesting story. They hit the bottom with bone-shaking force, dust and debris clouding their vision. For a moment, everything was a blur of pain and confusion. The bandits charged after the fleeing girls, gunshots cracking through the night air like thunder. Most of the girls didn't stand a chance. One by one, they fell, their bodies crumpling under the relentless hail of bullets. The forest echoed with their screams as the bandits showed no mercy. Some girls, though injured, kept running, clinging to the last thread of hope. But Adamu, the leader of the bandits, was livid. His fury burned hot as he backed others to his men.
"Find them all! Leave no one alive!"
he shouted, his voice like venom. In the pit, Jumai struggled to her feet, her legs trembling beneath her. Her body ached from the fall, but the pain in her heart was worse when she turned to Ummi, who lay still. Jumai's breath hitched. She knelt beside her, shaking her gently, praying that Ummi would open her eyes, but there was no response. Ummi was gone, her life claimed by the fall. Tears welled up in Jumai's eyes, but there was no time to grieve. Around her, a few of the other girls groaned in pain, some clutching injuries from both the fall and the bandits' attack. The pit was dark and cold, and the smell of blood hung in the air. But Jumai knew they had to keep moving. They couldn't stay there. She steeled herself, her mind racing with what to do next. Only she and a few others were strong enough to move. She had to act fast. "Listen," Jumai whispered urgently to the others. "I need to look around. Stay here for now. I'll be back." With that, Jumai rose to her feet and began to explore their surroundings. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she realized the pit it wasn't just a hole, it was the entrance to a vast cave. The walls were cold and damp, the floor uneven beneath her feet. Jumai's heart pounded as she went deeper. The cave branched into several tunnels. Each tunnel seemed to stretch into the abyss with no clear way out. Confusion set in as she stood there, trying to decide which path could lead them to safety. Panic threatened to rise in her chest, but she swallowed it down. Which one will lead to the exit? She wondered, her mind racing. She had to make a choice, but it felt impossible. Jumai hurried back to the others, her heart heavy with the uncertainty of what she had found. When she returned, she saw the fear in the eyes of the girls who were still able to move, and the pain etched on the faces of the injured ones. She couldn't let them down. "We're inside the cave," Jumai whispered, her voice trembling but determined. "There are so many tunnels, but I don't know which one leads out." The girls looked at her, fear and hope mingling in their eyes. "We can't stay here," Jumai continued, her voice steadying. "We need to move deeper into the cave. If the bandits find us here, we're done for." Jumai, with the help of the other girls who could still walk, began carrying the injured ones deeper into the cave. They moved as quickly and quietly as they could. The cave seemed endless, its darkness swallowing them whole as they ventured further in. Finally, they reached a small hollow where they could hide. The air was thick with dust and the oppressive silence weighed on them all. Jumai knelt beside one of the injured girls, her hand trembling as she touched her face. The girl's breathing was shallow, but she was alive. Jumai turned to the others, her heart heavy. "You girls stay here and watch over them. I'll go with one of you to find help." One of the stronger girls, Asma'u, nodded resolutely. "I'll come with you." Jumai nodded, though her mind swirled with fear and uncertainty. They didn't know what lay ahead in those tunnels, but staying still was a death sentence. Together, Jumai and Asma'u ventured deeper into the unknown, their hearts pounding as they faced whatever darkness awaited beyond the next turn. Adamu stood amidst the carnage, his sharp gaze sweeping over the lifeless bodies of the girls scattered on the forest floor. His lips curled into a grimace, but it wasn't satisfaction that filled him, it was rage. He wasn't looking for victory, he was searching for something, or rather, someone. His heart pounded with frustration as his eyes darted from one corpse to another.
Where is she?
He backed, his voice thick with fury. Adamu was still pacing, seething with anger, when one of his men came running toward him, breathless and wide-eyed.
Shugaba, the Allah suka gani.
Without a word, Adamu followed the man. They approached the edge of a large pit and the man gestured downward. Adamu peered over the rim, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene below. Among the jagged rocks and twisted bodies, he saw the remains of girls who had fallen to their deaths, but still, Jumai was nowhere in sight. Adamu's jaw tightened.
Get down there! Check if she's among the dead. If not, find her!
He growled, pointing to two of his men. The men didn't hesitate. They quickly tied a rope to a nearby tree, securing it tightly before beginning their descent into the pit, their boots scraping against the rough stone walls. Meanwhile, deep inside the cave, Rahila, one of the few girls left with the injured, kept watch. Her heart raced when she heard the distant sounds of movement. She panicked, her pulse quickening as fear clawed at her chest. Were the bandits coming for them? Jumai had instructed them to hide if anyone approached, and now Rahila had to act fast. "Shh, we have company," she whispered to the others, her voice trembling. The girls scrambled to cover themselves, dragging branches and loose rocks over their bodies as best as they could. Their breathing was shallow, their prayers silent but desperate. Rahila carefully hid behind a boulder, peering out just enough to catch a glimpse of any approaching danger. "Please, God, protect us," Rahila prayed, her eyes squeezed shut as the sound of the men descending the pit grew closer. Meanwhile, Jumai and Asma'u moved cautiously through the winding cave tunnels, their legs growing weary with each step. The weight of their journey pressed down on them, both mentally and physically, and with each turn, Jumai wondered if they were walking further into darkness with no way out. Doubt gnawed at her. "Do you think we will ever find a way out?" Asma'u asked, her words laced with fear. Just as fear began to settle deeper into their hearts, a flicker of hope caught Jumai's eye. "Asma'u, look!" Jumai pointed ahead, where a soft light shone at the end of a narrow passageway. It was faint but unmistakable. The two girls sprinted towards the light. When they reached the end of the tunnel, they skidded to a halt. Above them was an opening, a jagged tear in the cave ceiling, letting in a stream of moonlight that bathed the cave floor in a soft glow. Wow. Asma'u's eyes widened, filled with relief. It's a way out," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with excitement. For a moment, they stood there, overwhelmed by the sight. "How do we get up there?" Asma'u asked, her voice faltering as she stared up at the towering rock walls leading to the surface. It was far too high to climb, and there were no vines or footholds in sight. Jumai's mind raced, but then a sense of calm washed over her. "It's not a problem," she said with a quiet confidence. "At least we know there's a way out. Now we just have to go back and bring the others." They exchanged a look, both knowing that the journey wasn't over yet. But for the first time in hours, hope sparked in their hearts. They turned, retracing their steps, ready to lead the others to the light that beckoned just beyond the darkness. The bandits descended into the pit, their torches flickering ominously in the dim, suffocating air of the cave. As they reached the bottom, they paused, standing before the tunnels that stretched in every direction. Each passage seemed to lead deeper into the heart of darkness. The men hesitated, unsure of where to go.
"Which way do we go?"
one of the men asked nervously, his voice trembling in the stillness of the cave. The other stared into the gaping tunnels, his mind racing.
"We'll split up,"
he growled, his voice sharp as steel.
"One man per tunnel. If you see anything, call for the others."
Without hesitation, they split off into different directions, each man disappearing into a separate tunnel. Their torches cast weak flickering light as they ventured into the unknown. Meanwhile, Jumai and Asma'u had finally made their way back to the injured girls. Jumai scanned the girls, her mind already forming a plan. "Asma'u, Rahila," she said, her voice steady despite the fear building inside her. "Both of you, take the girls and go ahead. Lead them toward the light. I'll catch up soon." Asma'u stared at her, eyes wide with worry. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice shaky. "Don't worry about me," Jumai replied, forcing a calm she didn't feel. "Just go, get to the opening and wait for me." Rahila and Asma'u exchanged hesitant glances but nodded. They had no choice but to trust her. Without another word, they gathered the injured girls and began leading them deeper into the tunnel, their footsteps echoing softly as they moved away. Jumai watched them leave, her heart heavy. She couldn't follow just yet, not until she finished what she had to do. She quickly retraced her steps, moving back to the point where they had fallen. Her stomach churned as she reached the bodies of the dead girls. Jumai knelt and began to carefully remove their hijabs one by one. She needed them for something. She gathered as many hijabs as she could. Just as she collected the last one, she heard a voice echoing from above. "Master, there's a girl down there." Jumai's blood ran cold. One of the bandits had spotted her. Immediately, Jumai bolted, her heart pounding in her chest. She scrambled towards the tunnel where she had asked the other girls to enter. But before she entered, she tore one of the hijabs into shreds, scattering the pieces at the entrance of the multiple tunnels that split off from the main path. She knew it wouldn't stop the bandits for long, but it might buy them some time. With a final glance toward the pit, Jumai darted into the tunnel leading to the opening where the other girls were waiting. Behind her, Adamu and his men started descending into the cave, one by one. When they reached the tunnels, his frustration grew when he saw the scattered hijab pieces at the tunnel entrance.
"She's trying to confuse us,"
he muttered, realizing what Jumai had done. She had scattered the pieces of hijab at the entrance of each tunnel so as to confuse the bandits, in order for them not to know the actual tunnel they entered. Adamu's anger fled, but he forced himself to stay calm. He couldn't afford to lose control now.
Split up!
Adamu backed, his voice ringing through the cave.
2 men to a tunnel. Ashiru, Yunus, come with me.
The men obeyed instantly, each pair disappearing into a different tunnel. Adamu, Ashiru, and Yunus headed into one of the tunnels. They moved quickly, their torches lighting the way, but Adamu's gut twisted. He knew the girl was clever, too clever. In the distance, Jumai's heart pounded as she raced through the cave, the sounds of the bandits fading behind her. She knew they would catch on soon enough, but for now, all that mattered was getting the girls to safety. The first rays of sunlight began to filter through the opening as Asma'u and the girls reached the opening in the cave. The soft glow of dawn bathed the landscape outside, offering a glimmer of hope. Moments later, Jumai arrived, her breath heavy but steady. Her eyes scanned their tired faces. "We don't have much time," Jumai said, her voice low but urgent. She pulled out the hijabs she had gathered from the fallen girls. "Tear them, tie them together. We'll make a rope to climb out." The girls, though weak, quickly tore the hijabs into long strips, tying them edge to edge as Jumai had instructed. Their fingers moved fast, their fear giving them speed. As they knotted the makeshift rope together, Jumai tested each knot to ensure it was strong enough to hold their weight. The pressure was palpable, the thought of the bandits chasing them making every second feel like an eternity. Once they were done, Jumai picked up a small stone, tied it to the end of the hijab rope, and threw it toward the opening above. The stone fell back down with a thud, much to her frustration. She tried again and again. It slipped back into the cave. The girls watched in tense silence as Jumai tried once more, her determination unshakable. This time, the stone clung to something outside the cave with a solid grip. "We're good," Jumai whispered, her heart racing. She looked back at the girls, her gaze firm. "I'll go first. I need to make sure the coast is clear. Stay ready." Without waiting for a reply, she grabbed the rope and began her ascent. Her hands gripped tightly as she climbed, her body moving swiftly despite the exhaustion pulling at her muscles. When she finally pulled herself through the opening, she found herself standing on top of a rocky hill. The view stretched far and wide, the sky slowly brightening as dawn approached. Quickly, Jumai secured the hijab to a sturdy rock, ensuring it wouldn't give way under the weight of the others. She returned to the opening, her heart racing as she signaled to the girls below. "Start climbing, one by one, the weak ones first." The girls moved quickly, taking turns as they climbed the rope. One after the other, they emerged from the cave, their faces pale with fear, but alive with determination. Rahila was the last to climb, her hands shaking as she grabbed the hijab rope. Just as Rahila was halfway up, Jumai's heart stopped. 2 of the bandits had reached the opening below. She could hear their voices growing louder. They saw the rope, saw Rahila climbing, and without hesitation, they began pulling at the hijab, trying to yank her back down. "Keep going, Rahila," Jumai yelled. Rahila, her face pale with terror, kept climbing, her hands gripping the rope with all her strength. When the bandits realized they couldn't pull her down, one of them raised his gun and aimed. The sound of gunfire echoed through the cave, and Rahila let out a sharp cry of pain as a bullet struck her leg. Her grip faltered for a second, but somehow she found the strength to keep climbing. With every ounce of determination, Rahila pulled herself up, her leg bleeding, but her will unbroken. Jumai grabbed her arms, pulling her to safety as the bandits below cursed in frustration. Seeing that the bandits were now trying to climb up after them using the same hijab rope, Jumai acted quickly. She ran back to where the hijab was tied. With one swift motion, she untied the rope, letting it drop back into the cave. The bandits screamed as they fell back down with a hard thud, their bodies crashing into the rocky floor below. Jumai took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She turned to the girls. "We have to move now." As she looked around, her eyes caught sight of something in the distance, a small village nestled at the bottom of the hill. Relief surged through her. It wasn't far. and it looked peaceful. Safety was within reach. "We head for that village," Jumai said, pointing to the settlement below. The girl, still shaken but determined, nodded in agreement. They started down the hill, their bodies aching but driven by the desperate need to escape. Jumai's mind remained sharp, alert to every sound around them. She knew Adamu and his men would come back. They would hunt them again, but for now, they had a chance to survive, to live another day. If you enjoyed the story and would like to see more interesting and intriguing stories, please consider subscribing to this channel, not forgetting to turn on the bell notification icon so that once another video is being posted, you will be the first to be notified. You can also check out those videos here. I promise you won't be disappointed. Till we meet again in my next video, remain blessed.